Trauma activation, airways compromised.
BP is 80 over PELP.
Moving inside.
Nobody in the Cedar Ridge County ER knew that the quiet night nurse changing bandages with steady hands had once carried men out of burning wreckage under enemy fire. They only knew her as Nurse Dana Marsh. She kept her sleeves down. She kept her past buried. Until the night 3 bleeding Navy SEALs were wheeled through the doors, and one of them looked up at her and whispered a name nobody in that hospital had ever heard. Widow. Dana had worked at Cedar Ridge General for 6 years. She was the nurse who never flinched, the one who could start an IV in a moving ambulance without spilling a drop, the one the younger staff quietly admired but never quite understood. She lived alone in a small house at the edge of town, tended a garden of tomatoes and marigolds, and drove a truck with a dent in the door she never explained. Nobody asked where the dent came from. Nobody asked why she sometimes stared at the tree line outside her window, like she was listening for something only she could hear. The Tuesday night started like any other, the fluorescent lights humming, the waiting room half empty, the coffee in the break room gone cold. Then the radio crackled, multiple trauma incoming, gunshot wounds, military personnel, ETA 4 minutes. Dana's hands did not shake, but something in her chest tightened, an old muscle memory waking up after years of sleep. The doors burst open, and 3 men in torn tactical gear were rushed in on gurneys, blood soaking through field dressings that had clearly been applied in a hurry, in the dark, under pressure. The lead trauma doctor, young and overwhelmed, called out orders that were a half step behind what the situation demanded. Dana moved before she thought. She grabbed a clamp, pressed it exactly where the femoral bleed was hiding beneath a layer of gauze nobody else had checked, and said in a voice that carried the weight of command, "Hold pressure here now." The doctor stared at her, the nurses stared at her, but the man on the gurney, pale, bleeding, barely conscious, stared hardest of all. His eyes locked onto her face, and something in his expression shifted from panic to disbelief. He grabbed her wrist with what little strength he had left and said one word, "Widow." The room went silent except for the monitors. Dana froze. 6 years she had buried that name. 6 years since the extraction in the mountains that no official report would ever fully explain, the one where a combat medic pulled 4 wounded operators through hostile terrain alone after their transport was destroyed, working through the night with nothing but grit and training and a refusal to let anyone die on her watch. The men she saved that night knew her only by her call sign. They never learned her real name. She made sure of that, because after that mission, she walked away from the uniform and never looked back, carrying wounds no scan could ever find. Now one of those men was on her table, bleeding again, and recognizing the only person who had ever saved his life. "You survived," he whispered, tears cutting through the blood on his face. "We looked for you. Command said you transferred out. Nobody could find you." Dana's composure cracked for the first time in 6 years. "I didn't want to be found," she said quietly. "I just wanted to be someone who saves lives without anyone needing to salute me for it." The young doctor, still holding the clamp where she had placed it, finally understood he was not just watching a nurse. He was watching a legend the entire special operations community whispered about but had never been able to name. Dana snapped back into focus and took over the trauma bay completely, calling out orders with the calm precision of someone who had done this 100 times in far worse conditions. She stabilized all 3 men within the hour. The bleeding stopped. The vitals steadied. The crisis passed. Later that night, after the men were moved to recovery, the eldest of the 3, a grizzled team leader named Marcus Hale, found Dana alone in the supply room, restocking gauze with hands that had finally started to shake now that the adrenaline was gone. "You could have let someone else handle it," he said. "You could have stayed hidden." Dana looked at him, eyes wet but steady. "I didn't become a nurse to hide from what I did in that uniform. I became a nurse because I never stopped being someone who runs toward the wounded instead of away from them. The uniform just changed. The mission never did." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding settling into his exhausted face. "Command's going to want to know you're alive. they still talk about Widow like she was a ghost story. Then let them keep telling it, Dana said with the faintest smile. Just leave my name out of it. I like my quiet life. Word never officially spread beyond that hospital, but something changed in Dana after that night. She stopped hiding quite so completely. She started mentoring the young nurses with the same fierce patience she once used to train junior medics. She kept her sleeves down less often. And every year on the anniversary of that extraction, an envelope with no return address showed up at her door, containing nothing but a single photograph of 4 men standing together, smiling, alive because of her. She never needed a medal to know her life had mattered. She only needed to know that somewhere out there, 4 families still had their sons, their husbands, their fathers, because a woman named Widow refused to let go. Sometimes the greatest heroes are not the ones who wear their courage on their sleeve. They are the ones who quietly carry it every single day, waiting for the moment the world needs it again. If this story moved you, hit like, drop a comment telling us what part touched you most, and subscribe for more powerful true to life military tribute stories every week. Your support helps us honor the quiet heroes who never ask for recognition.